The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the guest and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs or position of SwagAbility, its board members, sponsors, or affiliates. Some content in this episode discusses topics such as drug use and addiction, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. They say rock bottom teaches you lessons that mountaintops never will.
Well, I'd say it probably started in high school is when things started to go awry.
And I want to go back to your book for a minute. We'll come back to a couple more questions that are.
The memoir and the reflections book, so it's meant to all be used in conjunction. So
Was that a conscious choice? And if so, what was your thinking behind that?
it wasn't a conscious choice, but I feel that
Wow. Yeah. Accomplished so much in such a young age. They say rock bottom teaches you lessons that mountaintops never will. For Andrew Drazen, rock bottom wasn't a metaphor, it was a cell. 7 felonies, 8 treatment programs, and 1 near fatal overdose later, he found a kind of freedom most people never do. Not behind bars, but within himself. Hey friends, welcome back to the SwagAbility Show. I'm your host, Steve Wagstaff. Here at SwagAbility, we believe that God can turn even life's hardest chapters into stories of strength. Because thriving where life finds you isn't just our message, it's our mission. Today's guest is someone who embodies this mission in every way. Andrew Drazen is the author of A Vision of Hope, a memoir written during incarceration that became the foundation for a powerful trilogy and a 90-day framework helping people rediscover who they are and who they can become. Andrew, thanks for taking some time to hang out with us on the SwagAbility Show this afternoon.
thanks for having me, Steve. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Let's go back to where your story really began to shift. I'm thinking back to maybe back to your teens or your 20s. When you think back to those years, what was the first sign that life was starting to kind of head what we would say off the tracks?
Well, I'd say it probably started in high school is when things started to go awry. When I switched schools from my middle school, I went to a middle school that was a combined middle and high school, and there were 500 students total. I switched schools for high school and went from 500 to 3,000, and I'd already kind of began experimenting with drugs and alcohol at that point. It was a little marijuana, a little alcohol. Then my freshman year, my marijuana use exploded. It was all day, every day. Then I got my car and the selling started. Then my first arrest, which happened at school during my junior year, getting expelled from school, in and out of jail, the legal system, overdoses. I mean, it was off track for quite some time. I just didn't realize the road that I was heading down until I was already there.
A couple questions for you, and this will be a controversial question and probably a controversial answer, but I don't want to shy away from it. I've heard people on the side for the use of marijuana legalized. They say it's not a gateway drug at all. There's no truth to that. It's a controlled whatever. Just like some would say alcohol is just a social drink. It's not, doesn't make an alcoholic out of someone. And it's maybe there's truth on both sides, but I would love your take as someone that I noticed you said your weed use exploded. Where do you lie in the argument or at least opinion on that being at least the entryway into it? Or is that just kind of a subjective opinion?
Well, so that's a loaded question. So first off, I'm for the legalization of all drugs. I feel like you cannot stop free will, and the problem isn't so much with the drug and the individual, it's with the individual with themselves. Why are you using the drug? So it's changing that relationship and making it safer for people who aren't ready to stop. As far as a gateway drug goes, I feel like it's going to kind of boil down to specific individuals. It can be, and especially if you're already willing to break the law if it's illegal in your state to smoke marijuana. I feel like you'll be more likely to break the law to use other drugs as well. It's really how much risk the individual is willing to undergo. As far as like the addiction properties of marijuana, I do believe it can be psychologically addictive, but I also believe that there are medical uses for it. I mean, it can help people sleep, it can help people eat, it can help people relax, and currently there's a lot of other drugs being prescribed for those things. So then drugs are prescribed to deal with the side effects of those drugs. And I do feel that it can be a more natural way to treat many different ailments. And especially some of those kind of more serious ailments, a lot of obscure names like that have like neurological effects and things of that nature. It can be very beneficial for people in dealing with those types of ailments as well.
Just for clarity, I don't know if I heard you right, or it could be your opinion when you said you're for um, making all drugs legal, like fentanyl and those as well.
Yeah. I believe that incarcerating and punishing addicts for being addicts, which is a mental illness, it's not effective. I believe that those resources should be put into prevention and education and making treatment widely and readily available for those who seek it. By keeping it illegal, I feel like we're pushing a lot of those. There's a lot that comes with that. I mean, you have the power dynamics in South America and the fact that that's where a lot of their money comes from is pumping drugs into the US. If we were to legalize them and dispense them in safe ways, and make sure that at those dispensaries, for lack of a better word, there's trained staff on hand and there's ample treatment information for when people are ready to make that step. I feel like that would be a much better approach. I feel like we'd see a lot less deaths and we'd see a lot more people coming out of the shadows and willing to ask for help by kind of reducing that stigma around it. And pretty much all drugs have some kind of use outside of meth. I don't see any use for that. Fentanyl is often prescribed to cancer patients and people undergoing major surgeries. Cocaine has been used as an anesthetic throughout the years. MDMA and ketamine have shown positive effects in therapy settings. So there are uses. It's just changing how we look at and how we interact with drugs because they've been there throughout all of mankind essentially, and they're going to continue being. It's making sure that we are properly educated and have the resources available for those who develop a problem.
So, would you say, like, if I were to take the opinion like less fentanyl, or at least lessen the way that it's not free flowing, do you feel there needs to be guardrails on it though? Like, I understand surgery, you break a femur or any type of pain. Of course, I understand the fentanyl for sure. Like that, all I agree with everything you said that there are medical uses for each of them. My concern, I guess, would be children, and they become so readily available if they were legalized that it would be a detriment to young kids. But interesting, very interesting take. Let me ask you this: you said your addiction took you through 8 treatment centers and multiple incarcerations, but something changed that last time. What was the difference about that moment when you say that last time?
Well, so about a year before that, I'd been in a relationship that just kind of showed me that I could have a different life for myself. And I was using at the time that the relationship ended because of the use, but it just kind of planted that seed that I didn't have to, I could know a different life and know some peace. So I did a inpatient at that point. I got out. I was clean for like a year and I stopped doing the things that kept me clean. I lost my gratitude, whereas once I was grateful for my job, I was now resentful for it. I didn't stay connected to the people who helped me stay clean, and I relapsed again. I ended up overdosing, and that's what landed me in the final treatment. It was a treatment in prison. It was in lieu of my probation. I was in drug court at the time, and I had to sign my last chance agreement, meaning if I had one more screw up, that meant dirty a drug test or a missed appointment, one more anything, I would be discharged. And I was looking at 7 years behind bars and then 5 years on parole, for lack of a better word, afterwards. So it was fairly significant. That's when I landed in jail and I wrote the book. So I knew I had 6 to 8 months to do, and I'd done a decent amount of time in the past and didn't really make the best use of it. So I wanted to make better use of my time. And along the way, a few different people had kind of planted that seed, like, you should write a book. Like, I'd been told that a couple of different times. So I just decided to do it. And I set a goal to finish it before I got out, finished it 5 minutes before I got out. And that was really kind of the beginning of this journey.
Yeah, I want to get to that book too, because I know it's coming out on December 2nd, I believe. But before we turn the page, no pun intended, what is the biggest, for anyone that is right now listening that has addiction, what is the biggest lie or biggest stumbling block to an individual preventing them outside of incarceration for getting help? Is it, I'm in control, like I don't have a problem, self-denial? Is it a self-control issue?
I feel like for most people, it's going to boil down to fear of some way, shape, or form. Maybe it's fear of getting clean. Maybe it's fear of going through the withdrawals. Maybe it's fear of getting honest and having people look at them a certain way. Maybe it's we're lying to ourselves, because a lot of times we think that other people don't notice or that we're hiding it, and everybody can tell. Everybody can tell.
Is there a negative connotation for coming, like getting clean? Is it an identity? I'm just curious about what that meant.
So, I mean, identity is a big part of it, because once we remove the drugs and the alcohol, we have to replace that with something. And we spend so much of our time numb, or trying to become numb, or trying to figure out a way to become numb. And that's just how we've lived existence for so long. So you take that away and you just have this wave of emotion. And there, a lot of time there's shame and regret. And we have no choice but to kind of look at our actions and the impact that we've had on others and to reconcile. And it's learning how to kind of forgive ourselves for that and realize that that wasn't really us. And it doesn't have to be who we are moving forward. We have a choice over who we become.
Yeah. And I want to go back to your book for a minute. We'll come back to a couple more questions that are trying to form in my head as we speak. But finishing at 5 minutes before your release, what did that symbolize for you personally, or did it? It just seems like such a statement. Writing a book while you're in incarceration, and then kind of like writing that last chapter, it's done, and then the key is turned, and you've got your freedom. Is there any sort of symbolism that you see there for you personally?
Definitely symbolism, renewal. I mean, it took a lot of work and dedication to be able to hit that target. I mean, it was 4 to 8 hours every single day of writing it by hand. And while I knew that that wouldn't be the end of it, because I can't just turn in a folder of handwritten pages to and say, here, publish this, it was the start of the journey, but it was definitely the first milestone. And it reinforced that what I set my mind to, I could accomplish if I'm willing to put the action behind it.
And your trilogy, it isn't just a story, it's a system, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what sets you apart. Can you walk me through a rough 90-day framework?
Yeah, so there's a vision of hope, a story of redemption and purpose, which is the memoir. There's a vision of hope reflections, where I speak on a lot of different topics. It just kind of distills the lessons learned along the way. And then there's a workbook for practical application, where you can use it as a mirror to kind of learn about yourself and grow. So I have developed a 90-day curriculum around it. I've already got my first few beta partners, and at the beginning of the process of getting it certified as evidence-based, which is a multi-year process, but it's one that I'm going to undergo, because my goal is to be able to get it into like the DOC, and allow prisoners to take the course before they get out. I feel like that's a very applicable audience, for lack of a better phrase. But the curriculum itself, it can be worked. The workbook is for sale also, so an individual can just go through it on their own without being in a group. It's just that structure works as well. It focuses on 5 key areas. The first is going to be identity restoration, where we just kind of learn about who we are, what we really like, what we dislike, what our goals are, what we want our life to look like. Then it moves into cognitive restructuring, where we look at our thoughts and whether what we think is based on reality or our perception of reality. And we analyze how we behave based off of our feelings and emotions. Then it goes into goal setting and action planning. It turns into like visualizing what you want your life to look like, and creating an action plan to make that your reality. Then at the end, it zooms out and it focuses on legacy framing. So it gets people to think about how they want to give back to their community and make their goals not strictly self motivated.
Can I ask how old you are? Wow. Yeah. Accomplished so much in such a young age. And while you're writing your book in incarceration, obviously much of it is lived experience. Were you able to draw on resources as well while you were in there to help solidify whatever diagnostics or whatever parts of your program work? Or is this a complete work of lived experience?
So the curriculum and the program didn't develop until after I was out. It just started with the memoir and the reflections
Right.
book while I was in, and then it just kind of grew from there. And then I just pulled, having been through 8 treatments myself, I
Yeah.
have a pretty good idea on what made an impact for me and what wasn't. So I'd borrow bits and pieces, and really the program kind of mirrors the memoir and the reflections book, so it's meant to all be used in conjunction. So whatever chapter you're on, the questions are going to correspond to whatever the subject matter was in that chapter. So I did add a few things that I've never experienced in a treatment setting, but I think they will be impactful. For example, one of those things at the end of the program, it ends with a capstone speech where you just put a bunch of different pieces together, and one of those pieces is writing a eulogy to yourself from the perspective of a loved one that you'd hope to hear at your funeral, to kind of get people to think about the impact that we have on others and how we want to be remembered, and then to work towards that, so that is what is said about us when it's all said and done.
I want to quote you for a minute and then get you to unpack it. You say, addiction is a symptom, not the cause. Can you unpack what you mean by that for our listeners today?
Yeah, I mean, nearly every time the drug isn't the problem. There's a reason why we use the drug in the first place, and it's identifying what that is and healing from that. Usually it's some kind of unresolved trauma of some kind, or some insecurities, something along those lines. So it's once we put down the drug, it's okay, now are we going to really do the work and look at ourselves so we can heal properly so we don't go back to that? Because I feel like that's why so many people end up relapsing, is because they don't do the work to properly heal. And that's why, like, in step work for AA and NA, a lot of people fall off at that 4th step because they don't want to look inward and take that moral inventory.
True that until you hit rock, it's another saying you always hear, but until you hit rock bottom, you really, you don't latch on to, the minority, I guess, would latch on to wanting to find true freedom. Is that just a saying, or is there, I don't know statistically what it is, but more often than not, it's those that hit rock bottom that do well to find their way up again? What's your take there?
So rock bottom is going to look different to every individual. I mean, someone's rock bottom could be being late for work one day. They may just realize, like, hey, this is starting to interfere with my life. I don't want it to. I'm going to stop. And that's when they make that decision. Other people, they won't find it until they're in the ground. I mean, it's just, it's when is enough, and you don't want the consequences that you're currently experiencing. And it's when the pain of changing becomes less than the pain of being the same.
I noticed your curriculum never mentions the word drug or alcohol. Was that a conscious choice? And if so, what was your thinking behind that?
It wasn't a conscious choice, but I feel that everyone has something to heal from, and we could all learn ourselves better and make a better plan to create the life that we want for ourselves, because so many of us are stuck in lives that we never intended for ourselves and are discontent with this area or that area or this area. And it's, we only get one life on this planet, in this body, in this form. So we should make it the life that we want. So the curriculum, the tagline for A Vision of Hope Media is everyone has something to recover from. So it's a very inclusive curriculum, and while it is beneficial for people in reentry, dealing with the justice system, dealing with addiction, it's not only for them, if that makes sense.
You touched briefly on it a few minutes ago when we were talking, but how are programs like your former drug court and others responding to your material now?
So I have my first three beta programs. As I said, I'm going through the evidence-based process, but that's going to take getting beta clients and gathering data, stuff like that. I did talk to the Racine County drug court coordinator, and they looked over the materials and they gave me high praise on it, but said that since they are funded by grant money, and part of the criteria are that all of the curriculum that they used are evidence based, they'd be risking their grant money if they were to institute it. So we'll circle back once I get it evidence based. But she did mention that a couple of the team members are going to buy books and they'd like them signed. And she said that she was going to talk to the judge about me potentially coming in and speaking to the current participants. And it's all building relationships. We all have a common goal, and one quote that I really like is, you go quicker alone, but we go further together.
Yeah, I've heard that before, and there's so much truth behind that. Yeah. Friends, before we continue, I want to take a brief moment to thank our partner, Podmatch, a platform that connects podcast hosts with the ideal guests who truly have something meaningful to say. In fact, today's episode was made possible through Podmatch, and I can tell you from personal experience, it's one of the most powerful tools out there for discovering guests who inspire, educate, and transform lives. If you've ever dreamed of starting your own podcast, or you already have one and want to find authentic guests who share your vision, I highly recommend joining Podmatch. Simply visit joinpodmatch.com/swagability. That's joinpodmatch.com/swagability. Let's move a little bit further. I want to talk about faith, loss, and legacy. You've spoken with incredible openness, so thank you for that. But you also have talked about losing your fiance, Caroline, and I want to spend a few moments because I know this is still really fresh. What has her loss taught you about healing, and how has it reshaped your mission with what you're doing now?
Well, I mean, it's taught me that healing isn't linear. When you go through something as traumatic as that, I feel like it's not something that you just get over. It's something that you can get through. And obviously, her suicide occurred in July of this year, and there were some weeks where I did not get much done. In the end, it just reinforced my to help others who are dealing with some similar circumstances, be it addiction, mental health, reentry, any of the above, or just discontent life. I mean, we all need support, and she tried. I know she did, and I wish you were here to see what this becomes. But there's no better way that I can honor her than by helping others. I mean, she cared about what everyone thought and felt, and was so giving of herself and her time.
Yeah. No, there's no need to apologize. It's raw, it's fresh. Our prayers and love go out to you. You said honoring her means helping others. What does that look like, helping others day to day for you personally?
It means being there when people need you. I One of my friends, his name is Neil, and he has a problem with alcoholism right now, and he's actually going to be checking himself into a detox and then an inpatient center within the next couple of days. He also pre-bought my books and has been kind of on me to get them to him. I just got them in, so I'm going to drop those off to him. Another friend of mine needed a place to stay. I had an empty room in the house, so I let him move in. So it's just it's being of service however you can. And then for me, it's making these inroads with these treatment providers and these reentry organizations and letting them know about the curriculum, because I truly believe in the power that it has to help people find their direction.
Right along the same lines, I know you've quoted Luke 17:20-21. The kingdom of God is within you. How does that belief show up in your work and in the material?
It's self empowerment. Instead of looking outward for some savior, we need to learn how to save ourselves. We are all born with that divinity within us, and it's echoed several times throughout the Bible. And I mean, really, all religious leaders kind of preached the same type of core message. It's just how it's packaged. So it's just attaching, well, first it's healing yourself and then finding that direction for your life, how best you can serve the world, how best you can contribute, and then letting that guide you, because when the light within shines bright enough, it can guide the way for others.
How do people know when, one step is across the line?
Yeah, so recovery doesn't have to be something as overt as an addiction or a very compulsive behavior, something like that. I mean, it can be something from our childhood, like maybe bullying or abandonment issues or self image issues, self esteem. Maybe you were picked on as a kid. Maybe you were in an abusive relationship. Maybe you just had one dream for your life and it just ended up dying and you've never really reconciled with that. We need to really take a look at what it is we've gone through, what our role was in it, and come to a place of acceptance so it doesn't continue to manifest in other ways. Like, for example, one of the examples that I give either in the book or the reflections book is, maybe someone grew up in a tough neighborhood and they had to learn to be and to fight to survive. And they grow up and they continue to exhibit that same aggression. And now they're getting fired from every job they get because they keep getting into it with coworkers or superiors, and they can't hold a job and they don't shed that previous identity. So it's really examining our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and making sure that they align with who we want to be.
For someone who's lost their sense of self, I don't know, maybe after failure or a trauma or burnout, where does the rebuilding process begin? Or is that different for every individual?
Well, it begins when I'd say the first thing that you have to do is identify what you're discontent with and what you'd rather be doing. So first, like, you got to figure out the example of burnout. What are you burnt out from? What would make you not feel burnt out? And then it's mapping out a plan to basically shift into that different reality, because it's not going to happen overnight. And if we don't identify what we'd rather have in its place, then we're walking without any clear direction. And that, we know what's wrong, but not what would be right. So now we're just stuck in this place of discontentment. So that's the first step, identifying what you want to change and what you want to change it to.
Is the why ever there? The
Well, yeah,
why?
the why is going to be different for everyone, and that's kind of one of the goals of like the program that I put together is so our why isn't so self-centered and self-motivated, because we're all interconnected. We are a society, even if society as a whole tries to tell us otherwise, that we're not connected and that, we're all alone in this. It's not the truth. I mean, we're all connected at an atomic level. So it's making sure that we live to the benefit of others and not just ourselves.
Your story also is very evident, but that healing doesn't stop at recovery. It grows into purpose. How can people move from simply surviving to actually living with some sort of direction again?
Well, first, it's finding what you're passionate about. So I know many people might not even know what they're passionate about. And then it would just be trying a bunch of different things until you find something that brings you real joy. It comes back to that question where if money weren't an issue, what would you spend your days doing? And then finding a way to monetize that and make that your life, because when we enjoy what we do, we never work a day in our life. Like I said, life is too short to be spent in a 9 to 5 that you hate, in a relationship that you're miserable in, and, you know, whatever the situation is. Life is too short to not live it to your fullest potential.
Amen to that. For the listener right now who may be hearing this and it's resonating big time, and they know within them that they're stuck in their own quote unquote cell. Maybe it's emotional, maybe it's mental health. I don't know what it is, but they're stuck. What's one step they can at least take today to begin moving towards a place of purpose?
Get honest. Get honest with yourself, preferably with someone else, but first you got to get honest with yourself and taking that identification, like identifying where you're not living up to your values, where you're falling short, where your strengths are, where your weaknesses are. It's really learning about who you are, what makes you tick, and what you want out of life before you can do anything else.
Andrew, your story is remarkable. To me, it's a reminder that rock bottom isn't the end. It's often the starting point towards purpose. Can you tell my listeners where they can find your work? We'll certainly provide it in the show notes, but how best can they support your work and where can they find your material?
Yep. So all of the books are available for pre-order wherever books are sold: Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you buy it on the website, avisionofhopebook.com, all 3 copies together, you get a 10% discount. So, and I'd also just check in on avisionofhopebook.com. All of my podcast appearances are going on there, blog posts. There'll be information on the curriculum. So that's where you can stay best up to date.
And friends, if you're someone or you have a loved one that is struggling, please know that you don't have to walk through it alone. There are individuals out there, such as Andrew at SwagAbility. We also have contacts as well. And we're here to help, whether that's finding resources, connecting you with the support you need, or simply being a voice on the other end of an email. We can often get you the help you need at little to no cost as well. Reach out to us and we can plug you in somewhere or get you someone to talk to. Email letstalk@swagability.com. Let's talk at swagability.com, no apostrophe, all lowercase. And be sure to subscribe to the SwagAbility Show on our YouTube channel. It's one of the best way of helping us get our message to others and help them to move to a place where they can not just be surviving, but they can thrive in life. Again, Andrew, thank you for taking some time again to be with us today. I look forward to connecting with 2.0 when those books release on December 2nd and seeing how many people are effective in a positive way because of that. Lastly, friends, if you've been moved at all, head to our website, swagability.com, sign up for our newsletter so we can stay in touch. And until next time, stay strong, stay healthy, and remember, thrive wherever life finds you. Swags out.